Welcome back to the Big Lad Podcast. This is episode 50. It is finally here. Today we are going to do a Q&A, but first of all, a big thank you to anyone who has been here along the way, whether you were right at the start at episode 1 or whether you've joined us partway through. Really appreciate all of the support. Trying to grow this platform now, being a lot more consistent, and yeah, here we are, episode 50. So as I said, it's going to be a Q&A. I put a couple of question boxes up on my Instagram the last couple of days just to get some questions, see what people want to speak about. And we're going to go through them. I've got a fairly extensive list here. So if you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to have all of these sort of bookmarks so you can go to specific questions. I can't, unfortunately, do that on Apple or Spotify. So you're just going to have to listen through. There's some really good questions, especially towards the back end as well. So make sure you stay around for the full thing. So we'll jump right into it. How does episode 50 feel compared to your first ever podcast that you did? I feel like my sort of conversation skills and sort of on camera speaking is a lot better than it was when I first started. I also feel like I'm a lot better at listening now. If you go back to the first couple of episodes, every couple of seconds when the guest was speaking, I'd be like, okay, yeah, feeling like I needed to, for some reason, say something because I was too quiet for too long. Whereas the art of podcasting and conversation is being able to listen, pick up on things, and then come up with a response when the time is right. In terms of solo podcasting, I'd say I'm fairly new to it. I've only done like the last few really that have been consistent solo podcasts. There's been a couple earlier in the sort of podcast history, but they were very sort of few and far between and not very often at all. To be honest, episode 50 has took a lot longer than I expected it to. It's been a little bit inconsistent over the years. This started back in 2021 when we were in, I think it was like lockdown 2. My plans for that year were actually to go and meet up with a lot of people that I knew through Instagram and film YouTube content and work out and do things like that. Obviously, that was taken away due to lockdown, so I thought, let's just start up a podcast instead and get to know people that way, because there was a lot of people that I'd spoken to for a good few years through DMs and stuff, but never actually had a conversation. So it was a really good thing to get me going, and I really enjoyed it, especially during those lockdown times, because it meant that I could speak to people that weren't just within my household, like my mum, my dad, and my 3 brothers. So it was quite nice in that point of view. But yeah, episode 50, I feel like I'm a lot sort of better on camera and in conversations now. And I think that's also transferred over into my actual like real life outside of this, like going to speak to other people. So yeah, I'm feeling a lot better than I was episode 1. It was very sort of, it wasn't great. I was using my work laptop and headset. The camera quality and audio was pretty poor, I can't lie. But now we've got the camera set up, we've got a proper mic. The mic actually came, I think, for episode 2. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, just little things along the way that have made the big difference. Like I've got the Ring camera, I've got a light in the background now with a fake plant. I need to sort out this paint still. It's really bugging me. And I've got another light as well, so there's no shadows across my face, because if I only had this light on, this face would be sort of shadowed off. So yeah, it's just little things, and I think it is just doing the thing and learning on the job, so to speak. Next one. What are the positive effects of training on mental health? So I think for me now, like I have been going to the gym for 13 years and I don't necessarily do it anymore for building a physique or anything like that. I'm not really that fussed. I'm not at my limit of sort of how big or anything I could get. Like I could obviously be a bit leaner, I could obviously be a bit bigger. I'm just not that fussed. I tend to go now for, I guess it's a mental health feeling, just feeling better in myself, getting the day out of me and just having that release. So the positive effects for me for training on your mental health, for me, it is one of the best forms of like self-medication. So there was a report a couple of months ago now, I think it was, and it came out to say that lifting heavy weights is as good, if not better, than antidepressants. So if we can get as good a feeling from lifting weights, then maybe we should look towards that instead of going down the medicine route. Because I've mentioned in a previous podcast, I do think the NHS are far too quick to just hand out antidepressants instead of getting to the root cause of things. So that's my opinion for the positive effects of training on your mental health. For me, I've also been say I've failed an exam, like an accountancy exam back in the day, really bad mood, gone to the gym, came back, and my family have been like, it's a completely different person. So just things like that. What's your opinion on crossfitters now? It's a bit of a sticky one because I feel like it's a very small amount of crossfitters that ruin the whole sort of brand and way of training for the mass. For me, the issue is the idiots online that are chasing likes and views, doing stupid things, doing multiple bans and this, that, and the other, instead of actual CrossFit content. Because I know quite a lot of people that do CrossFit. I know now a lot of people that do High Rocks, because the gym I go to is a High Rocks affiliated gym. So I know a lot of them. One of my main issues with CrossFit is what is the need of you taking your top off in the gym? I'm a big guy. I get quite hot and sweaty. I have never once in my life in the gym taken my top off. I will just leave drenched, which it's part of the gym. Now, I've been told that it's because after they finish the session, they can sort of dry themselves off and put a fresh top on. I'm like, just take a second top with you if it's that big of an issue. For me, I get back in my car and get a shower when I get home. So, yeah, that's my main sort of peeve with CrossFitters. The whole sort of training modality in itself, I'm not too fussed on it. The one thing that is sort of getting to me at the moment is newbies seem to be starting like High Rocks and stuff like that, expecting to get their sort of dream physique, which is not going to be the case. It is not a training modality where you are going to build that insane physique. You will most likely just lose weight and sort of tone up. But what you need to understand is most of these CrossFitters and High Rocks people that are coming across to that sort of training, quite a lot of them have spent a lot of time doing the bodybuilding side of things and maybe even powerlifting to an extent. So they've got that muscle mass, and then they've trained High Rocks, and that's why they are looking the way they are. It's not because they've been doing High Rocks and CrossFit their whole lives and now they're all of a sudden big, massive, lean, so-called athletes. That's another thing, actually. People calling themselves hybrid athletes. Absolute idiots. Not a single one of you really is an athlete unless you are getting paid to do it. I hate to break it to you, that is just it. I could go on for quite a while on this one, but yeah, that is my general opinion on CrossFitters. How many Guinness do you reckon you'll be putting away on Sunday? So, this Sunday, which is the day this goes live, I am at my mate's wedding in Ireland. I've actually got an absolutely shocker weekend. So, on Saturday, I'll be playing football, and then in the evening, I've got my cousin's wedding. First thing Sunday morning, I've got a 5:50 a.m. flight from Liverpool to Dublin. I'm then flying from Dublin to Kerry, and then my mate is picking me up, and the wedding is at 2:00, and then I come back on the Monday. So, how many Guinness? Who knows? I may keep a tally on my Instagram story, so just head over there and see how I get on. What's something interesting about yourself that you don't tell anybody about? See, the things... I don't really think there's anything. I feel like I'm quite an open book. So, like, obviously, I've spoken about my rowing in the past. I used to do rowing to quite a high level. I had Great Britain trials twice. That sort of fell off when I started full-time work. I didn't really have the time to train as much as I would have liked to. And then basically everyone that was rowing went into either uni or into full-time work. So it sort of fell apart from that point of view. one of those things that I'm a little bit gutted that didn't carry on. If I really wanted to, probably could have, but it would have been at a lesser level. So I used to train 9 times a week. So that would be Monday to Friday and twice on Saturdays and Sundays. So a hell of a lot of volume. Going into full-time work with exams and things like that, would not have been able to keep that up, because during the week, my training session would start at like 5 o'clock and I would get home around 8, half 8. So I guess that's one thing. And then quite a lot of people also think that I'm a full-time personal trainer, which I'm not. That is kind of like a small side hustle. I am a qualified management accountant by day. So for those of you that don't know that or haven't noticed me every now and again speaking about it on my Instagram, yeah, I'm not a full-time personal trainer. I don't know whether you find that interesting or not, but yeah, I haven't really looked through any of these questions. I've got a massive list, so these are very quick responses. In terms of anything interesting that I don't tell anybody about, I don't really think there's anything, either that or I don't think it's that interesting. But if I come up with anything, I will come back to it. So, Death Row Scran. Starter, main, and dessert. Starter, I'm trying to think of what I'd usually go for. So, starter, I tend to go for like calamari. Feel like that's a good way to start. A main would be a steak. And dessert, ooh, I am a sucker for a warm chocolate brownie with vanilla ice cream. That is my go-to. So I think, without putting too much thought into it, I think that's where I'm going. Yeah. When do you reckon you'll slow down? Probably never, to be quite honest. I hate not doing stuff. Like, I get really annoyed with myself when I'm wasting time, and it's a difficult one because obviously a lot of what I do is on social media. So it's very, very easy to get pulled into just scrolling and wasting time on it. But in terms of slowing down, like, I actually said this the other day, I can't remember what it was like where I was literally just working and going to the gym and playing football without the personal training, without the social media, without the podcast. Genuinely can't remember what it was like. And it actually got me thinking, what did I do with all my time? Like, what was I doing? I like keeping myself busy. Like I've mentioned in a previous podcast that quite a few people close to me have said that I've probably got ADHD. Now, I've never been tested for that. I'm not really fussed on doing it either. But I do show probably a lot of signs of that. In terms of like actually slowing down, I'm not that satisfied with like where I'm at. Like, I feel like I've got a lot of potential to do a lot more stuff. So this one is a big one with the podcast. I'm trying to grow this. I would love for that to become like a bigger thing in my life. If I could potentially get to a point where that's being monetized and things like that, that would be absolutely amazing. I really enjoy doing it. Not too big of a fan of editing it, so I would love to just be able to get to a point to pay for an editor. That would be unreal. There's also like the clothing brand that is going to pick up again now. There's big movements in that, so that's going to be taking more time up. I've mentioned that I'm not too fussed on growing the PT business. I like having it as a small side hustle thing. I like helping small amounts of people. As like the question suggests, I don't have that much free time outside of work. And if anything, my work life will probably only get a bit busier the higher I climb up the ladder. Just that's a separate conversation, because there is a point where I will not feel that the pay rise is worth the extra workload and responsibility. Don't know where that ceiling is yet, but I'm not at it at the moment. So I guess I need to balance things out. Obviously, as I get older and stuff like that, I would like to become a parent one day. Not right now, really not ready for that. I've not long moved out, so just having the freedom of being in the house, not having like parents' rules and stuff like that, it's quite nice. So I'm enjoying this for a nice period of time before any of that starts happening. So yeah, there's no sign of me slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it is only going to be speeding up and getting busier. If you could redo life again with a blank canvas, would you change your career or anything else? See, I'm not a fan of the whole redoing stuff, because if those things didn't happen, you wouldn't have learned the lessons, you would not be where you are today. Now, if it was a thing where it's going to happen, you're redoing life with a blank canvas, it's not sort of an option, would I change my career or anything else? Potentially. I mean, I think my main issue was during the sort of lockdown periods. I wish I did more with that. Now, don't get me wrong, I got my PT qualifications, grew my social media, then messed it up by deleting 2,000 fake accounts, and now Instagram has hated me for the last 3 or 4 years, and my content doesn't reach anyone, which is not ideal. So I would definitely redo that, would just leave it, because my account grew from like 1,500 to 5,500 followers within a couple of weeks, just because of my home workouts that I was doing. Everyone was sort of loving them, and my account literally just blew up within a couple of weeks, and then I messed it up. Anything else? Probably would have started the podcast a bit earlier, been more consistent with it. And then from a work perspective, I really feel like I've essentially lost 2 or 3 years in terms of career progression, because I stayed in my job, which I wasn't really enjoying, for various reasons, due to my manager, with fake promises and things like that, but also just needed that next step. But I stayed in the job due to lockdowns, because of just having like a safe, secure job. I didn't want to move and then potentially risk being made redundant within a couple of months, because nobody knew what effect it was having on the economy at the time, and it could have gone either way. It could have been horrendous. But from that perspective, I probably would have jumped a lot earlier, because I do feel like I'm 2 or 3 years behind where I could potentially be. So from that perspective, yeah, I guess that's only talking the last couple of years. In terms of changing my career altogether, I don't really know. Maybe move into a different sector that interests me more, because the current sector that I'm in, it is interesting, but it's not something that really like ignites that fire for me to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I can't wait to work, I love my job and things like that. So I already do have plans to potentially change that up, but I'm currently locked in by a study agreement, which I can pay myself out of, but I'm not willing to, because it is a hell of a lot of money at the moment. So I'm just going to wait that out, get some more experience, get some training and qualifications under my belt, and then go from there. Do you have any favourite sayings? Mine is, you can't see your own reflection in the boiling water, which I think is a very good one. Yeah, my sort of go-to would just be, it is what it is. This was sort of something that my dad sort of ingrained in me when I was a kid, to not stress over the things that you can't control. So essentially, if you can't control the outcome, then don't waste time stressing about it. And I think this is a really easy and simple sort of phrase to just live by. So yeah, I don't worry about things that I can't control, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So yeah, it is what it is. What are the big up and coming plans for Georgie boy? So, big plans, I don't really have. Well, I don't know, it depends what you say is a big plan. I don't really have any sort of huge plans at the moment. I did do a YouTube video right at the start of the year where I was saying that I'm going to enter as many sort of events and competitions as I can this year. And I've barely entered any, because I sat back and thought about it, and I was just like, I've got too much on my plate. I'm doing too many things, trying to train for too many different types of events while still playing football. So I did think about doing another triathlon, and then I did think, well, I'm going to probably do the indoor championships for rowing in December again. But in terms of like entering loads of events this year, I'm just not doing it, because yes, I could enter an event, but I know that because of other things outside of that, I'm not going to be like 100% focused on that event, because I just can't, because I've constantly got football, I've got my work, I've got everything outside of that with the podcast, and personal training. So I'm just being smart now. I'm trying to, if anything, do less and let my body recover properly. Other plans, like I mentioned, the clothing brand's going to be stepping up now. I've got a website currently being built, so that should help things, and it automates everything for me, so I don't have to physically do the shipping myself, which honestly was a little bit of a ball ache, because I would get the delivery to my house. I would then have to individually pack everything, label everything up, and then get it to the post office. Whereas this new setup, my supplier is going to do that all for me, which is perfect. Other plans are to build this podcast into something a little bit bigger than it currently is. So if you're not currently following or subscribed, do me a favor, help me out and help me grow this podcast. I would be very much appreciated. Any other plans? I don't think so. Probably working towards a work promotion. I've been in my current role for 2 years now, well, just over 2 years. I got a promotion at the start of the year, which is sort of a halfway house between an actual full promotion. So I'm working towards that. I need to get a project management qualification now, which is my IPMAC. So I'll be working towards that and see where we get to. I'm slowly starting to look for roles internally which are coming up. Just need to see what excites me and what I want to go for. So yeah, hopefully a promotion or job change at some point. What got you into fitness and coaching, and have you always had a healthy relationship with it? So since I was a kid, I have always been involved in sports. I started playing football for a team, I think, when I was about 6. I have done various other sports since then. I've played cricket, I've done swimming, taekwondo, obviously rowing. I did athletics for quite a while during high school. I think I mentioned swimming. Yeah, so I've always had sports in my life. All my brothers have been into it as well. And I actually started the gym when I was 15. So this was because I was on holiday in Spain, firstly with the school. I think that was 2010. And I just remember people saying how skinny I was around the pool and stuff like that. And then the next time was Spain in 2011. So we went for like a family holiday in the October. We had some photos around the pool. And again, I just noticed how skinny I was looking because I'd had a really big growth spurt. I grew like 8 inches in 6 months and barely put any weight on with that. So at the time I was like 6'2" and 10 stone 2, which is not a lot for that height. I'm now like 6'4" and a bit and sit around 16 to 16 and a half stone. So since starting the gym, I have put on a good 6 stone. Obviously, that's not all muscle. There is obviously additional fat to that. But I would say also with coaching, that I guess started from going to the gym with mates and helping them out. So back in the day, I would do a lot of self-research, going on like the old bodybuilding.com forums, things like that. There wasn't really the same information there is out there today back then, but just learning things myself, learning along the way in the gym, and then sort of having mates come along with me, sort of teaching them things, doing like little bits of form tips with them, and then I just enjoyed helping people out. So when I started my account on Instagram, which was 2018 now, so it's like 6.5 years ago, the original reason I started that was to actually just meet like-minded people because my mates weren't really into the gym and fitness the same way I was. So I just wanted to meet similar people. And then I started getting asked questions on there. I started doing form videos. People really started to take to it. I then took on like a couple of clients just to test the water, see how I could do, and it was quite successful. So I got my qualifications. I then opened it up a couple of years back, and just due to work commitments and stuff like that, I've never really wanted to grow it massively. Like I've had all of those companies out there trying to help you grow your business and stuff like that. And it's never really took my interest, just because I want to keep it to a small amount of people because of how busy I am outside of work already and, well, in work. So I like giving a small amount of people a really good service. So moving on to the point of, have I always had a healthy relationship with it? I would say so. I'm not someone that really gets bothered, so I've never had any sort of issues with eating or body dysmorphia, really. The only thing I would say is that it's going to sound a bit big-headed, but I never really noticed how big I was, and this also transferred into football when I was a bit younger. So it's only when I see myself on photos with other people that I realise sort of how tall I am and how much bigger I am. Because in my head, I'm still that relatively short kid that was really skinny. So at high school, before I had that massive growth spurt, I was probably around average height-ish. And then I had this massive growth spurt. But in my head, I was still that small kid, essentially. And it took myself like a long time to get used to the fact that I'm obviously a lot bigger than average. And even in football, so like after I stopped rowing, I went back to playing football, and I was maybe 14 and a half stone at the time, which is still obviously not like skinny, but it's not massive or anything like that. But I was obviously a lot bigger than most people, even though I was still like 18. So yeah, that's the only sort of issue I think I've ever had, is the fact of not knowing my actual physical size and being able to use that in sports like football. Issue, I mean, yeah, I've never really had sort of unhealthy relationship with food. I've always eaten, like when I was rowing, I was on 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day, no problem. So yeah, none of that's really bothered me. The highest weight I've ever gone to was like 242 pounds, which is, what is it? It's like 17 stone 4, I think, which it didn't really bother me, to be honest. It happened, and I took my foot off the gas for a while and then got it back down. So it was never an issue. What got you into finance and accounting? So, at school, I was always good at maths. I did maths further, maths and chemistry at A level. I did a physics AS level. My teacher was awful though, and quite a lot of the class failed as a result. There was only a few geniuses in our class that actually did quite well. But I learned more about my teacher's French exchange student than actual physics. So not ideal, which was a shame because I actually really enjoyed physics. But yeah, always good at maths, was never really good at English or anything like that, so numbers just made sense. My dad also owns an accountancy company, so maybe that influenced it a little bit. I did a few stints of work experience there over the summers for a couple of extra quid, but my type of accounting is not that sort of personal accounting. I do management accounting, so I account for large projects and do commercial project management as well. So I have quite a lot of people, when I mention my accounting on my story, like sort of reach out and go, "Oh, I need an accountant." I'm like, I'm not your guy. So yeah, I guess it's just a maths background, to be quite honest. I didn't want to go to uni either. I looked at going to uni, but there was not a job that I actually like really wanted that required a degree. So I didn't see the point of just going to uni for the sake of it, which I feel most people do. So I went down the old-fashioned apprenticeship route, which is coming back up, a lot more popular these days, I feel. People are moving towards them a lot more, which is good to see, because not only do you gain experience at a younger age, you're also getting your qualifications paid for, and you're getting a salary as well. Instead of going to uni for 3 years, getting a degree that you may not even end up using, and then you're in 50 to 100 grand's worth of debt these days. So yeah, that's how I got into sort of finance and accounting. Would you coach full-time? If yes or no, why? I actually did think about this a while back, and at the time it made more sense. But now that I've had a few promotions and stuff, for me to replace my current salary, it would take a lot of work to get towards. And if I was to ever do it, I would essentially be working my full-time job, build the coaching to a point where then I can drop my 9 to 5, which would be a lot more difficult now than it would have a couple of years ago. So I did actually think about doing it, but I don't think it'd be that easy to do because I don't think I'd be able to balance the amount of clients with my current day job to the point where I could then like get it to a stable point where I could drop my actual job. So yeah, I've thought about it because I do really enjoy helping people achieve their goals. But then I mentioned in, I think, the last podcast that I think doing it full time, I don't think would really fulfill me as much as I would hope it would. I think it would get very repetitive, sort of weekly check-ins for like 20, 30, 40, 50 clients, however many it got to. I think that would get pretty repetitive. And I've found like a few other coaches that I know have sort of burnt out from that. So I currently enjoy it. I don't think I would enjoy it on a mass scale. Similar questions to before. If you could do things differently, would you? Not really, because all of that has got me to where I am today. There are things that I wish I'd done maybe a little bit differently, and who knows where that could have taken me, but there's no point in living in regret. Just don't make the same mistakes going forward, essentially. What is your opinion on the fitness industry in terms of what it was and what it is now? I actually mentioned this on my story the other day. I think sort of 2016 to 2018 fitness industry was the peak of the fitness industry. It was when social media was coming popular. You had the OGs, you had the Steve Cooks, the Mike Thurstons, the Christine Guzmans. They were still on the rise. And I think now it's so saturated. Like everyone's got a fitness account. Any PT, especially the ones that I know in my gym, seem to get the clients starting up fitness accounts now. I don't know whether that is a case of them trying to get a bit more marketing from them posting stuff and tagging them or whatever. Like it's a whole keeping yourself accountable. You don't need to start a fitness account to keep yourself accountable. Does it work? Potentially, but back then, I think it was so good. Now, I think these days people are just chasing likes and views and just doing stupid stuff. And it really just puts me off the fitness industry a bit. I get bored of seeing the same content on Instagram. And like I say, everyone's got a fitness account these days. So there's a lot of people out there that are posting content that can potentially injure people. There's a load of fake information. So I find for potential beginners, it could be a really confusing space because there's going to be one person saying something and then there's another person saying the complete opposite. So, yeah, what it used to be was my most enjoyable time in the gym as well. I was a bit younger. Recovery was ridiculous, so quick. But yeah, I think going back to the previous questions, if I could go back and like not change something but do something again, sort of 20, I reckon it was like maybe even 2015 to 2018, 2019, that period of the gym was by far the best for me. Favorite thing about fitness and biggest peeve? I think the favorite thing is there's so many different avenues that you can go down. So obviously there's like the bodybuilding route, the hybrid route, which is like CrossFit, high rocks. There's the powerlifting route. There's so many different training modalities that you can go down and so many different ways you can sculpt your body. But then not only that, just the feeling you get of going to the gym and maybe hitting a PB or just a good feeling that you get because you've gone and pushed your body and when you come out. So I think that's my favorite thing. Also, probably the community side of things. Like I know so many people in my current gym now just through my social media, and maybe that is because everyone's starting fitness accounts these days, but in general, just being able to go and speak to someone that you may have never met before. Biggest peeve, I think it is at the moment just, well, there's two. There's the crossfitters taking the tops off and running around the gym. That really just does my head in. And two would be client photo shoots. I've mentioned this a few times. You do not need to be doing a fitness photo shoot to lose weight or get in good shape. It is essentially paid marketing for PTs. So you're going to pay them for however many weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. You're also then going to pay for a photo shoot that they're going to use your photos for. So they may have made, I don't know, anywhere from £200 to £500, maybe. I don't know how much these people are charging, to be quite honest. But you're going to pay for that. They're going to use your photos to then get more clients. It's more for them than it is for you. And they'll market it as, oh, you can be your best and you can feel confident in your body and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it's marketing for your personal trainer. What split do you do? So currently, well, I used to do the old push-pull leg split, and I never really liked doing push. I did not like training chest and shoulders at the same time because they are big, heavy movements that use very similar muscles, and I feel like later in the session I would get very sort of not sloppy but like tired and just not be able to push anywhere near as much as I want to be. So I made my new split, which was back and shoulders and then chest and shoulder isolations. So and then legs, sorry. And then there'd be a bit of arms mixed into those two upper body workouts. But I just find doing back and shoulders works a lot better for me. I can push really hard on both types of movement. I then did chest and shoulder isolations because over the years I've had some niggles with my shoulders. So essentially I'm getting 2 lots of shoulders in a week. But it's more things like front raises, lateral raises, smaller movements, not big, heavy compound movements. Legs has been a bit hit and miss, not very consistent over the last couple of months, mainly because of me getting back to fitness to play football. I find that it's quite difficult for me to get a decent leg session in and then recover and be able to then train and play a game. So I train on a Wednesday and I play on a Saturday. So the only real day that I can do it on is like a Sunday or a Monday maybe. Now Sundays are tending to be my recovery sessions, so I will do like 2 4Ks or 2 5Ks or 2 6Ks on the rower, or I'll do like a light bike and a stretch. So I don't really want to be doing a heavy session on a Sunday. If I do one on a Monday, then I've got essentially one day and then I'm training on a Wednesday. So I'm thinking about moving towards more plyometric stuff at the moment and sort of build that in instead of really heavy leg sessions. So I just need to have a little think about how to get it in there. At the moment, I'm just not doing it because the football's taken it out of me enough at the moment. So as soon as I'm back up to speed with that, then I will introduce my leg sessions back in. Cardio or strength training, if you had to do one for the rest of your life, quite easy one, strength training. Just because you can essentially turn it into, well, I don't know if it allows you. I was going to say, I guess you can turn it into like a HIIT session. But if it is purely strength training, then yeah, you're just going to miss out on the HIIT stuff and do essentially bodybuilder splits. But yeah, strength training, because of just the benefits, I think are, as a whole, probably better than just doing cardio in terms of keeping muscle mass and things like that. Obviously, you're not going to get the same benefits for your heart and lungs. There is a small amount that you can get from strength training, but yeah, I think as a whole, if you weigh up the pros and cons of both, I think strength training edges it. Is the government blocking the sun? I don't know. I assume this is to do with the whole chemtrail conspiracy stuff. Now, I love a conspiracy, not because I necessarily believe them. I just find them really interesting because, like, the what if factor. Now, yeah, I've not really looked down the route of chemtrails. I believe they are a thing because of things that I've heard and seen with the whole altering the weather. Like, I've seen quite a lot of reports, like official reports. Like, I'm not just going off some random person on the internet, but yeah, I've seen reports of them actually apparently trying to alter the weather and things like that. So maybe. I honestly don't know. But I do think the whole climate change is massively overdone, because if you go back to like the 80s, they said places were going to be underwater by the year 2000, and what do you know? They're not. How do you best help yourself mentally when you're injured? Now, I have had my fair share of injuries over the years, mainly with my knee, and also had a fair few pulls on my hamstring. And I think that my hamstring actually goes back to, I was mentioning this to my physio the other day, I think it's because I was doing too much weight training and also playing football. So obviously the weight training was tightening up my hamstrings. I'd then go to sprint and pull hamstrings left, right and centre. So In terms of mentally, yes, it can be really annoying, but I think it's a case of just doing what you can. So when I did my knee, that was so painful, but as soon as I could walk again and drive, I got myself down to the gym. I was just doing upper body stuff. For cardio, I was doing the ski erg, which was fucking disgusting. But yeah, it is a case of just doing what you can and remaining positive. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. You've just got to deal with it and crack on, do what you can, and yeah, realize that it's not a permanent thing in most cases. An injury is an injury. Learn from it, grow from it, and crack on. So we have a quote writer around our local area. So when I go out for walks in the morning, every now and again, someone's wrote in chalk on the pavement, and it'll be some it's usually conspiracy stuff, which it makes me laugh. And there's someone I know locally that also finds them quite funny. So they're asking who's the quote writer, and to this day, I don't know. I've never seen them do it. I don't know whether they do it first thing in the morning or really late at night. But one day I want to catch who they are, because it just makes me laugh, because there's a potential chance I know who they are. Go-to podcast. I would say Chris Williamson mainly. I find it really hard to keep up with him though, because he uploads 3 times a week and his episodes usually around the 2-hour mark. And me trying to get a 2-hour podcast in 3 times a week is very unlikely. So I very carefully pick which ones I do listen to. I also listen every now and again to Mike Thurston's, but I found recently quite a lot of them are just about making money, and they get quite repetitive and boring. I also every now and again listen to Max Tunins, which is called Don't Be Sour, which again, decent episodes, but then I feel like it's getting quite repetitive because it's the same couple of guests recently that he's been having. And I did try and listen to the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphreys, and I can't remember the guy who does it with him, but the guy that does it with him I'm not really a fan of. So yeah, I find it quite hard to listen to that one. A lot of my mates listen to like football podcasts and stuff, but for some reason I've just never really got into them. I like listening to clips on like Instagram and TikTok of them, like the Overlap podcast with Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, Ian Wright and Roy Keane. And I think Jill Scott's on that one as well. So yeah, main one I would say is Chris Williamson. Favourite food? All of it, really. I'm a sucker for a steak. I will only ever have steak as well when I go out at an actual steak restaurant. I wouldn't just go to anywhere and get a steak because it's on the menu. I actually cook a really good steak. Yeah, probably steak. Favourite book you have read? I haven't read many books, I'll be quite honest. I very slowly read books because I get into a habit of doing it and then I just stop and fall out of routine with it. So I'm trying to think of what I've read basically over the last couple of years. So I've read James Smith, Not a Diet book, a lot of stuff that I already knew, to be quite honest. That was more for people that are new to fitness, but really good book, really good starter. James Smith's second book, which was Not a Life Coach. I thought that was really interesting. He did a lot of good research on that one. I haven't actually read his third book. I think it's How to Be Confident. I've had that since it came out and I've still not opened it because I was reading other books. Matt Does Fitness book. Again, it was very similar to just James Smith's first one, Not a Diet book. Basic stuff. I've read Ross Edgley's Blueprint, and I can't remember his other book. They're pretty interesting. I do like Ross Edgley, especially because I end up reading it in his voice. I find that I read all of these books in the author's voice. I'm about halfway through Atomic Habits, which is all right. It feels like it's pretty repetitive at the moment. Maybe it takes a while to get into it, I'm not sure. I notice a lot of these like kind of self-improvement books, I'm not really that big on reading, to be honest, because I don't know what it is, whether I just don't enjoy it or I don't know. I just can't seem to get into a rhythm of it. So probably not a great question for me. Do you believe in law of attraction / everything is energy? I don't know. I find it can be very airy fairy. A lot of people talking about law of attraction and stuff like that. I think you've just got to do the work, and then things happen. I don't think you manifesting stuff makes things happen. I think maybe you thinking about it, making a plan, and then putting that to action. If you want to call that manifestation, then call it that. But the general concept of it, I think, is just putting in the work and getting it done. Do you believe COVID was actually real? I believe it was a thing. I don't believe it was anywhere near as bad as it was made out to be. I am completely unvaccinated. I never got a single vaccine. And I got it, felt absolutely fine, and it was gone within 3 days. Now, I know there's obviously people that did have issues getting it, but at the time, I think I was, how old was I? 25. I was I'm a fit, healthy 25-year-old. Decided not to get it because I didn't really see the need to. I saw it as the flu, essentially, and I don't get the flu jab. So, yeah, I'm never ill either. Like, really. I think in 10 years of working, I've had 1 day off sick. And even then, I'm pretty sure I logged on in the afternoon. So, yeah, I just didn't see the point in me getting it. I think it was blown out of proportion massively. And obviously, there's things coming out about the jabs and stuff like that now, which are causing health issues for people. And I think the outcome of those health issues are probably going to outweigh the people that actually suffered with COVID. Not only that as well, I didn't agree with the way they were counting the deaths for COVID. It was like someone had died and had COVID within 30 days, and they counted it as a COVID death. Now, there was people dying of things like terminal cancer, and they were including that in the figures. Like, they were going to die anyway. They didn't die because of COVID. So, yeah, I really didn't agree with the way it was dealt with at all. I think the damage it's done to the economy is ridiculous. The amount of furlough pay that was spent out and things like that. And now I assume at one point we're going to probably have to pay it back in the form of some tax. I didn't get a single penny of furlough, so I would not be happy if that was the case. But yeah, there's probably a whole podcast that you could talk about that, and I am trying to walk the line as closely as I can, because the last thing I want is to be cancelled on episode 50. How do you manage a busy career and get in training? Just discipline, really. Like I said, I've been going to the gym now for 13 years. It is a habit. I feel crap if I don't go for a few days. It's part of my routine. So in terms of actually managing my time, I've actually fell off the wagon a little bit with this, but what I will usually do is on like a Saturday or Sunday, I will plan out my next week and I will allocate time and tasks to that. So I will know when I'm training, what I've got on maybe socially throughout the week. And yeah, it's just about sticking to it. Also, big fan of tick lists. I've got one right now with all the questions on and I'm ticking them off as I go. So yeah, it's just stuff like that. Would you want to have a career in fitness, or are you fully satisfied with your accounting career? Pretty similar to a question before. Like I mentioned with my sort of line of work at the moment in accounting, I will probably look to go into a sector that I'm more interested in. So I've already sort of looked, see what jobs there are in terms of like football teams, sports teams, Formula One, cars, just things that I'm more interested in. So obviously there is accounting and stuff like that in fitness. I've already thought about potential businesses as well. So becoming like an accountant for fitness professionals. That has been an idea. It may be something that I go down at some point, but in terms of a career in fitness, me having a role as like say an athlete or something like that, probably a bit late now. I am 28. There are obviously certain activities that you can potentially pick up later in life and become maybe a professional at it or semi-professional. But yeah, I'm not necessarily fully satisfied with my career at the moment, but it is something that I'll be working on in the near future. I actually did think whilst watching the Olympics, I was like, in 4 years, what could I potentially take up and be at the next Olympics? Now, obviously, it's a very small chance. There are people that have spent their lives doing these sports, but it just got me thinking. So, who knows? Do you think that you will ever take PEDs? And if so, why? And if not, why not? No, probably not. I've never even considered it. I have no reason to be quite honest. Most people in the gym that you see that are on them have no need either, unless they're just wanting to be the biggest guy in the room, and often they're not. Like, I've came across a lot of people that take stuff, and I've even like worked in sets with people when the gym's been busy that are clearly on gear, and they get surprised when I was lifting heavier than them, and you can see that they're absolutely juiced out of their mind, and they get a bit confused. So, yeah, I have no reason to. I'm not bothered about being the biggest guy in the gym or anything like that. I have no sport that I'm a part of that would potentially get me on a level playing field, like bodybuilding or powerlifting or anything like that. The only thing that may take my interest later in life may be like testosterone replacement therapy, and not even from like a gym perspective, more from just a general health perspective. Because obviously, as you get older, your testosterone drops, your energy levels aren't great, things like libido kick in and stuff like that. So that may be one that takes my fancy later in life if I am sort of struggling. The only other things that have really sort of took an interest, not even to take more from just information. Like, I like just being a bit of a geek sometimes and learning about stuff. Are peptides. They really interest me quite a lot from just an information perspective. And I was actually speaking to a guy in the gym who's a powerlifter that uses them quite regularly for injury recovery. And there are two compounds. One's called BPC 157, the other one's TB 500. And it's known as like the Wolverine stack. And apparently it is unreal for recovery and things like that. So how I understood how they work, you sort of inject them at the site, and then that brings fresh blood to the site. They're essentially long chain branched amino acids, so stuff that's already in your body and in protein and things like that. And it essentially makes new blood vessels around that area to sort of really speed up the recovery process. So yeah, that sort of stuff really interests me, like especially when I've had a couple of niggles and stuff like that. But I am a proper wimp with needles and stuff like that. Like, I, a couple of years ago, fainted at a blood test, so it's not something that I could ever do anyway, because I would literally just be passing out left, right, and centre pretty much on a daily basis. So yeah, it's not something that I'm ever probably going to consider. Do you see yourself breaking out the matrix and leaving your 9-to-5 job? I did mention this in my last episode. It is something that I probably see myself doing at one point in the future. I just don't know what, why, or when. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, in terms of going up the ladder, there becomes a point for me where the pay rise is not worth the extra workload and responsibility. As soon as I'm starting to work like crazy hours outside of work hours, for me, that's not worth it. That's not a work-life balance. I'm not getting paid for those hours outside of my sort of contracted hours. I don't mind doing it every now and again. I'm an accountant, so I have sort of busy times and I have quiet times. So it sort of evens out. So there will be days where I do work a bit extra just because I've got to hit a deadline. I don't mind doing that because I know next week I'll be pretty chilled. But yeah, I need to sort of find the point where I'm maybe not happy with the workload and the pay for the workload. So until that happens, I'm reasonably happy with my work-life balance. But yeah, I do see myself potentially starting my own business in the future. I just don't really know what to do. There's nothing that I've really thought of yet that I've wanted to go all out and just go for it. But I do have plans anyway to retire early. Now, I know that's crazy when I'm 28 and I've only been working for 10 years, but there's no chance I want to be working till I'm 65 to then enjoy maybe 10, 20 years at best. So yeah, I want to break out early, want to be nice and comfortable. and set myself up to be able to retire early. Thoughts on primal equipment. So the gym I go to is a primal gym. I've got mixed opinions on it, but I have mixed opinions on quite a lot of different brands too, just because most equipment is built for like average height people. I'm 6'4". I'm not freakishly tall, but there are machines where I am just too tall for, and they just don't hit the way they should. So, for example, there's a rig in our gym which has a cable on for a lat pull down. If I put my arms to grab the bar, my arms are still bent, so I can't get a full stretch at the top. When I pull down, the weights hit the top of the rig, so I can't get a full rep in. There's also a seated plated row where you face it and then it's like close grip. As I pull through, because of the length of my arm and the sort of arc of the machine, as I pull through, I get like a kink in my wrist, which is really uncomfortable. And yeah, it just doesn't work with my sort of levers. So there's quite a good few bits of equipment though. There's an ISO bench in there, which I really enjoy. I actually prefer it over benching. It is essentially dumbbell bench press, but it's fixed around like a pivot and you just plate it up. Really like using that machine. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of stuff in there that I just don't use because I don't enjoy the feeling of it. I don't connect very well with it. So yeah, I think you find that with every gym. Well, I do at least anyway. Is it the camera angle or are your ears tiny? Yes, I actually do have very small ears and a big head, which doesn't help because it makes them look even smaller. It's something that my family take the mick out of me for as well. So yeah, I've got pretty small ears for a big guy. Thanks for that one. Is sauce high in calories because you never seem to have it on any of your meals? So every now and again, I post my meals on Instagram, and quite often I don't show them with the sauce on because you can't see essentially what's in it. And what I do is when I put the sauce on, I will mix everything in the bowl. So yeah, I show basically, say if I'm having, sometimes I have like salmon and rice with like salad in there. After I've taken the photo, I will then put a bit of mayo on, put some sweet chili on, and mix it all in. And it looks unrecognizable. You wouldn't be able to tell what was in it. So yeah, I tend to not show the food with the sauce on just so you can see what's actually in there. But yeah, shut up. Would you recommend MyFitnessPal for calorie counting? Heard mixed reviews. I mean, it's the app that I've always used. I don't really see an issue with it. The issue usually is the user error if you are struggling to track accurately. The only other thing is as well, if you've got the free version, sometimes it glitches a little bit and there's adverts, but I mean, it doesn't bother me. Like, I've never paid for it. I'm not paying like £8 to split my meal timings up and things like that. So yeah, I find it fine. I've never really used another one, so can't really give you another thought on a different calorie counter. Final question. What is the effects on mental health medication on your body and progress at the gym? Now, I can't really speak on that one because I've never had mental health medication. So in terms of the effects on your body and the progress at the gym, I don't think there's any sort of effect on your progress at the gym. I think it's going to have an effect on obviously your mental health and your body, but not from a physical point of view. As I mentioned, I think the NHS do give them out basically like sweets. Instead of getting to the core issue that people are having, they just seem to prescribe them. Now, I do know people that have been on sort of antidepressants and stuff like that, and it just seems like it makes people numb to quite a lot of things. You're basically kept at like a steady level of happiness, which that's not life for me. Like life is, like Ronan Keating said, a roller coaster. So you got to have the ups and downs. So I feel like antidepressants numb you to the extremes of both and just keep you at like maybe like a solid 50% instead of having that 100% and maybe that 0% every now and again. But I feel like you can only appreciate the highs if you also can appreciate the lows. Now, maybe a low is maybe like a family member passing away. That's life, unfortunately. These things do happen. We're not going to be here forever. But that also can make you appreciate the life that you've got and how much you've got to live for at the top end of that, and appreciate the good times. So, yeah, going back to the question, I don't think it really has an effect on the progress at the gym unless the medication is potentially messing around with your sort of motivation levels to actually get there in the first place. Now, obviously, don't quote me on this. So it's not coming from any sort of scientific background, but I can't imagine mental health medication have an effect on your progress in terms of being able to build muscle or lose fat. Now, that is all of the questions. Thank you to everyone that has listened. Thank you to everyone that has asked a question and got to the hour mark of me speaking alone. I hope those questions were answered well. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I guess if you have enjoyed this one, drop a like or leave it a review on whichever podcast platform you are listening or watching on. If you are new, make sure you subscribe. And yeah, here's the next 50 episodes. Thank you very much for the ongoing support, and I will catch you in the next episode.